Capital One just made a move that most people in the credit space don't fully understand yet. If you've got a Discover card or a Capital One card, or you're sitting on the fence about either one, you need to hear this before July 27th. Because here's what nobody's actually saying. This is not a credit card merger. This is a power grab. And Capital One just positioned himself to become something that Visa and Mastercard genuinely need to think about. $35 billion. That's what Capital One paid for Discover Bank. And everyone out here is talking about cashback percentages and travel points like that's the story. That is not the story. So I'm gonna break down exactly what this merger actually means, which Discover cards survive and which ones quietly disappear, and what's changing for cardholders starting July 27th, and why the smartest credit players are making moves right now before the dust settles. So stay locked in, this one's gonna hit different. Let me give you the real breakdown on what actually happened here, because a surface level read on this deal misses the entire point. Every single time you swipe a Visa or MasterCard, there's a toll being paid. Visa collects, MasterCard collects. The bank issuing your card, whether that's Chase, Capital One, whoever, they sit in the middle and they pay to use somebody else's highway to move your money. Capital One literally looked at that model and said, why are we paying forever when we can own the road? That's the acquisition. That's the entire thesis in one sentence. Discover has its own payment network. It's not as large as Visa or MasterCard globally, but it's a real, functioning, independent payment rail. And Capital One just bought it outright for $35 billion. They control their own transactions end to end. They don't need to run every swipe through someone else's system and cut them a check. They keep more of every dollar that moves through their ecosystem. But here's where it gets genuinely crazy. And I want you to think about this carefully. What if Capital One doesn't just use a network for themselves? What if they open those rails to other banks? Now they're not just cutting out the middleman, now they are the middleman. Now other banks are paying Capital One to process transactions the same way they used to pay Visa and MasterCard. That is not a credit card company, that is a financial infrastructure play. That is a completely different business model than what most people think Capital One is. And on top of that, there's legislation in the works called the Credit Card Competition Act, which would force large banks to offer multiple network routing options on their cards. And if that passes, banks that only have Visa or MasterCard relationships have a problem. Capital One already has their own network. They're already ahead of that conversation before most banks even knew it was coming. This is literally chess. And most consumers are out here arguing about 1.5% versus 2% cash back, while Capital One is building an empire. Now I want you to tell me in the comments, did you even see this coming? Or did I just reframe this whole thing for you? All right, now let's talk about the stuff that's actually going to affect your wallet right now. Cardholders are already getting emails. Changes start rolling out July 27th, and people are nervous. Understandably, of course, because at any time a major acquisition closes, things shift. So let me give you my honest read on which Discover products survive and which ones quietly fade out. The Discover It rotating 5% cashback card, I think this one survives. That card has years of goodwill built up. People love the rotating categories. It got a loyal user base. It still competes well in the cashback space and doesn't directly overlap with Capital One's strongest products. That card has a reason to exist in a combined portfolio. Now the flat rate cashback cards, the 1.5% and basic 1% products, these are on borrowed time. Not because they're bad cards, but because Capital One already has those products. The Quicksilver sits right there in the same lane. Banks do not want to confuse customers with 5 versions of essentially the same card, which Capital One kind of already does, so now they would be overwhelming it. They want clean product lines. What usually happens in these situations, we've seen this before in the credit card space, is that existing users get to keep those cards. They become what the industry calls legacy products. But new applications stop, and the card quietly stops being marketed, and eventually, it's just gone. If you've got one of those simpler flat rate Discover cards and you're happy with it, keep it. Do not close it. Let me repeat this. Do not close it, because that affects your credit utilization and your average account age. But don't expect it to be around forever either. Always remember, you can downgrade or switch to a different product. Remember that. Never ever close an account. You want to switch it to a different product. It's gonna be just a different card with the same account number, and you keep the same age. That's exactly what you want for your credit profile. Now, as far as student cards and secured cards, I think Capital One has strong products in both of these categories already. Secured Discover cards could survive with some rebranding, but I'd watch that space very carefully. The Discover It Miles card. This is the one I'm most uncertain about because Capital One already has the Venture line, which is strong. There's going to be overlap there, and Capital One's travel products are frankly more premium. I wouldn't be surprised to see that Discover Miles product wind down for new applications relatively quickly. I want to give a special shout out to all my beasters out there that are working hard to fix their credit using DisputeBeast, the most advanced AI credit repair software ever created that comes with the 110% money back guarantee. But specifically to Kenneth. Kenneth's credit score went up 282 points after just one round with DisputeBeast. And Arthur's credit score went up 670 points after just 2 rounds with DisputeBeast. But let's not forget Destiny. Destiny's credit score went up 264 points after just 1 round with DisputeBeast. DisputeBeast's link is going to be in the video description and pinned at the top of the comments for anyone that needs to fix their credit. But here's the bottom line on cards. This is still early. Capital One isn't going to blow up Discover's portfolio overnight. They paid $35 billion, and they're not touching customers' relationships on day one. But over the next 2 to 3 years, the product lines are getting cleaned up. You can count on it. Now, I want you to tell me in the comments, which Discover card do you actually have right now, and are you worried about it? Switch gears here for a little bit. I want to talk about something that most people in the comment section are going to sleep on, and that's what this acquisition does to the credit approval landscape. Now, historically, Discover and Capital One had very different approval models. Discover has been known for being somewhat more accessible for people rebuilding or building credit. Capital One has their own tiered system with secured student and premium products. So when two banks merge their underwriting systems, that process takes time. And during transition periods, approval criteria can shift. Banks get conservative. Internal systems are being integrated and risk models are being recalibrated. So if there's a Capital One card you've been sitting on the fence about, whether that's the Venture X, the Saver, the Quicksilver, or any of the other products, my honest opinion is that you want to have that conversation with yourself before the transition fully locks in. Because I know exactly what's going to change, because nobody does yet. But because historically, applying before a major structural change is always smarter than applying after. This merger, you're not going to have 2 separate credit relationships to potentially build with. You're going to be one bank, one combined credit relationship, one set of rules about how many of their cards you can hold and how their internal scoring views your profile. The Venture X is still one of the strongest premium travel credit cards on the market, in my opinion. The Saver is phenomenal for people who eat out and spend on entertainment. The Quicksilver is still a solid entry point. And if you're rebuilding credit, Capital One's secured products remain some of the most straightforward paths to a prime credit profile. I preach this all the time and people just don't want to believe it. But all my clients that actually did the process and followed it, they all understand. You want to position yourself. Don't wait until the transition is settled and then try to figure out where you stand. Smart credit players move before the crowd catches on. Now let me shift gears here a little bit again for a minute because there's something happening with the travel prices right now that's directly connects to everything we're talking about with points and rewards strategy. Airfare is expensive, not a little expensive, genuinely, noticeably, frustratingly expensive. And airlines have basically said out loud that prices are staying elevated. They've seen that consumers are still booking, still traveling, still paying, so they have zero reason to bring prices down. The crazy part is premium cabin demand is actually still growing. Business class is selling. First class is selling. Wealthy travelers haven't slowed down. And as long as that's true, airlines can hold the line on pricing because they're making a margin in those cabins. But here's what the average consumer doesn't think about until it's too late. The points game becomes more valuable when cash prices go up. Not less valuable, more. Flight that used to cost $400 now costs $700. And you can still book that flight for 35,000 points. The value of those points just went up. The cash you would have spent went up. The points redemption value went up. And you win harder when prices are high if you know what you're doing. That's the key. This is why I keep telling people that travel reward cards are not luxury play. They're not something you pursue after you've got everything figured out financially. They are a strategy tool. Right now, for real people dealing with real travel costs, the absolute worst thing you can do with your points, I'm gonna say this clearly, is redeem them for gift cards or merchandise. The redemption rates on those are terrible. You are leaving real money on the table, transfer your points, book travel through portals, use them for what they're designed for. Now, I want you to let me know in the comments, are you team cashback or team travel? Because this debate is never gonna get old. Now listen, I hope you're buckled in because this is gonna be a long video because I have a lot of information to give you, so stick with me here. Because I wanna take a couple of minutes and talk about something that I think is one of the most important distinctions in this whole space. There are two types of people in the credit world. The first type is chasing a number. They want to see an 800 on the screen. They want that FICO badge. They're refreshing their credit monitoring app literally every week, watching their score go up and down and making decisions based on the number alone. Second type understands that the score is a byproduct, not the goal. The goal is strategic positioning. The goal is knowing how banks actually think, how products actually work, and how to use a system to generate real, measurable financial value in your life. Because an 800 credit score with no strategy is just a pretty number. A 740 with the right cards, the right utilization, the right timing, and the right point structure can be generating thousands of dollars in travel value per year. What Capital One is doing right now is a perfect example of the principle at scale. They're not trying to win at one thing, they're building a system. They control the cards, the banking relationship, and now the payment network itself. They understand leverage at the infrastructure level. Last part's the most important. The consumer level version of that thinking is, don't just try to get approved for one good card. Understand how multiple products work together. Understand how approval timing works. Understand how utilization, account age, and credit mix interact to build a profile that banks actually want to work with. That's the game. And most people generally never get there because they think the score is the game. Now, I want you to let me know in the comments, what's your focus? Are you chasing a score or are you building the strategy? So I want to zoom all the way out for a second because I think what Capital One has done here is the opening move into something much larger than this one acquisition. The financial services industry is consolidating. It has been for years. Big banks are getting bigger. Small and mid-sized banks are under constant pressure. And the payment infrastructure, the actual plumbing of how money moves, is becoming one of the most valuable assets in the world. Whoever controls how transaction flows controls information, controls fees, controls the relationship between consumers and their money and the most fundamental level. Capital One has been quietly building towards this for a while now. They bought ING Direct, which became Capital One 360, a real digital banking play. They've invested heavily in technology and now they own the payment network. The consumers who understand all this, the ones who can see what's coming before it arrives, are the ones who position early, get the best terms, earn the best rewards, and frankly, just move differently through the financial world. That's what this channel is about. Not just credit scores, not just card reviews, understanding the system so you can use it instead of the system using you. Now, here's the bottom line on everything we talked about today. Capital One Buy and Discover is not a credit card story. It's a financial infrastructure story and the consumer level implications. What card survives, how approvals change, what happens to your Discover relationship. Those are real and they're happening right now. You need to pay attention, make moves. Don't wait until the transition is complete and then try to figure out where you stand. That's what average people do. And if you have any questions about your specific credit situation, which cards make sense for you right now, or how to think about positioning during this transition, drop them in the comments because I read them and I try to respond to as many as I possibly can. And if I get enough comments, maybe I'll just make a video just responding to comments for like an hour. I could actually do that, but I gotta get enough comments and enough questions. And don't forget, if you have any collections, charge-offs, or negative items that you need to delete from your credit reports, make sure to watch this video right here because it's gonna show you how AI will do all the work for you, mail your letters, and it comes with the 110% money back guarantee. And if you felt that I brought you some value in this video, make sure that you don't forget and subscribe to increase your credit score.